Hello. As TudorCon approaches, Heather asked me to do a quick introduction to the topic that I have chosen to speak about at TudorCon. Bess of Hardwick, one of truly the most fascinating figures of the Tudor era, and one we really don't hear a lot about. You might not even know all that much about her, other than the fact that by the end of her life, she was the second richest woman in England after Elizabeth. She had a thing for building projects, specifically Hardwick Hall, more window than wall. But she started out as barely minor gentry and rose through the Tudor era to really achieve this. And that rise was just, there is just so much. I'm gonna give you a quick overview and you just sit there and go, okay. Anyway, first husband, I'm gonna kind of skip over just a little bit. That was when she was really young. He died pretty quickly. She goes into service in the Grey household, which keeps her close to the Greys for largely the rest of her life. You'll maybe remember that later on when Catherine Grey ran away or made her clandestine marriage to Edward Seymour, the Earl of Hertford, Catherine first went to Bess to help her break the news to Elizabeth. Bess refused, and Robert Dudley ended up doing it. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, Bess is in the Grey household, and that put her in a position to meet Henry Cavendish, who was busy visiting the monasteries during Henry's dissolution. They get married. He brings her to court. She burrows into the court fabric. And to give you an idea of how well she did that, when they had a bunch of kids, when her son was born, his godparents were John Dudley and Elizabeth. So that tells you right there just how close she was to basically everybody. In fact, later on, she would, one of the few people who managed to remain friends with both Robert Dudley and William Cecil, and was beloved by all of the factions. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Cavendish dies. Before he dies, he's accused of embezzling a bunch of funds, and on his death, Bess became obliged to repay them. So there's some question as to whether she's going to be able to find another husband, because any man she marries is going to have to take on her debts. But then everything flips. Elizabeth comes to the throne, and Bess marries William Saintlow. And William Saintlow was the head of Elizabeth's security detail during a very important time, during Wyatt's rebellion. And during that rebellion, you'll remember that Wyatt sent Elizabeth a message basically saying, watch out, we're going to be passing really close to you. And she sent back a very, whatever, I'll do as I have cause. And the message was sent orally through Saintlow. And obviously he was questioned rigorously in the Tower, and what was called his stout bravery stood up to that, avoided implicating her, and arguably saved her life. So when she came to the throne, he got rewarded significantly. She rewarded both him, she forgave Bess's debts, and the two of them were able to really accumulate a bunch of money and start building projects and having a wonderful time, which was its own problem because Saintlow's brother was eyeing their fortune, was worried that if they had any kids, Saintlow would leave the money to the kids and not to the brother, so the brother poisoned them. And Bess recovered, Saintlow did not, so now Bess was a widow for the third time. This time, she married nobility. She married the Earl Earl of Shrewsbury, who was one, together with the Duke of Norfolk. The two of them were the top Catholic lords in the country, also the two richest men in the country. And because of that, and because of his new wife, that made Shrewsbury the perfect host for Mary of Scotland when Mary escaped to England. So this began a 15-year period during which Bess and her husband guarded Mary Stuart. Now, sorry, there's a lot more twists and turns right here. At the beginning, everything was fine. The women got along. There was an enormous amount of embroidery done. Bess was a very skilled needleworker, so was Mary of Scotland. They made some incredible things. They spent an enormous amount of time together. And then there was an opportunity for Bess to, forget about marrying an earl, and she got her daughter to marry Shrewsbury's son so that her daughter would be the next Countess of Shrewsbury. But forget about marrying an earl. She was going to get her kids even higher up. There was an opportunity where Margaret Douglas, the Countess of Lennox, she was the mother of Lord Darnley, who married Mary of Scotland. Margaret had a younger son, Charles. And Bess and Margaret cooked together a scheme for Charles to marry Elizabeth's daughter, Elizabeth Cavendish. So the two of them got married, had a daughter, Arbella, who was now a major claimant. And Mary of Scotland, this was a rival claim to her own. I'm not going to say probably, but arguably, the legalities were Arbella was born on English soil, and so that made a difference in terms of whether or not she would be permitted to inherit the throne. That was one of the problems with Mary's claim, was that she was Scottish. She was not English and not eligible. But anyway, when Arbella was born, Bess and Mary all of a sudden stopped getting along. Bess stopped spending quite as much time guarding Mary Stuart, and who would that job have fallen to except for the Earl of Shrewsbury, Bess's husband? Shrewsbury and Mary started spending a lot of time together. The rumors quickly started flying that they had fallen in love, that Mary had borne his child. All of this was done in writing, and we have these letters, and it's an incredibly explosive thing. At the end, Shrewsbury gets replaced, and everything kind of dies down. Shrewsbury dies, Mary dies, Bess is left a widow for the fourth time. And at this point, you would think that things were going well, but in the 1590s, it started to look, once Mary had died, her son James really started to look like the preferred successor. He was already a king, he was a Protestant, and him being successor would unite the island. So all of a sudden, Arbella's claim was not looking anywhere near as good as it did when Mary was alive. But Arbella is still stuck in Hardwick Hall, away from the excitement of court. She gets mad, tries to escape, and contacts the son of the Earl of Hertford, who is also in line for the English throne, even though his parents' marriage had been invalidated. The Seymour family had seen this before. They let everybody know right away, so nobody got in trouble for it other than Arbella. But her crazy story, but it's getting a little bit further away from Bess. But the point is, this whole thing is, it's a really good story, and I look forward to telling it very carefully and very well. at TudorCon, and I hope you join us there. It is always the best weekend of the entire year, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. So thanks. Bye.